I've been asked to talk to you some about the origins and development of the economic situation and what kind of opportunities that it presents. Let me start by telling you about an ad that appeared on the back of the New Yorker, just in case you missed it, on the back of the New Yorker magazine on August 25th of last year, to keep the date in mind. The ad has a picture of a young man with a satisfied smile on his face, and above him is a big plus 15. And the text reads, "One less thing to worry about, and it's a beauty. Deciding where to invest your retirement savings can be pretty stressful. Put your mind at ease with the AIG companies. You're tapping into more than 85 years of wisdom and expertise that can help make your retirement savings last. Not worrying can reduce stress and add 15, that's plus 15, add 15 years to your life. We've helped over 5 million people retire stronger. Getting started is simple. Ask your financial advisor about AIG or visit retirestronger.com. Live longer, retire stronger, never outlive your money. AIG, it's great to be there." Just so you have your date straight, it was 3 weeks later, on September 16th, that the New York Times reported, quote, "Fearing a financial crisis worldwide, the Federal Reserve reversed course on Tuesday and agreed to an $85 billion bailout that would give the government control of the troubled insurance giant American International Group," what we've come to know as AIG. Now, when one sees that ad juxtaposed with the reality of events that followed it, one has to think, fraud? Now, I don't think there's any legal fraud involved in saying how strong you are when you all know that you're on the brink of not only your own disaster, but the disaster of the world's financial system. And that means a disaster for virtually all of us. Now, as I said, it's not legal fraud, but it certainly is a kind of fraud. Now, one of the important things there that I want to underscore about what I just said is that the risk involved was not only the risk to AIG, but the risk to everybody else. The financial system is a little bit like our automobiles, that we have laws and regulations on our automobiles, not to protect stupid drivers from themselves, although we may want to do that, but to protect the rest of us from their reckless driving, or our reckless driving. I suppose that I didn't have those regulations, I'd probably be reckless myself. And if I were a banker and I didn't have any regulations, I'd probably be reckless myself. Because just like you always want to get there a little quicker, you always want to make more money. You always want to make more money. Now, that wouldn't be so problematic if when you failed, you bore the costs of failure. But when the banking system fails, just like when a reckless driver fails, it puts other people at danger. So we have a system for regulating automobile driving. Why do we have such a flimsy system for regulating the operation of the financial system? Now, the answer to that question can be summed up, and this is where I see the development, the origins of the crisis, can be summed up in power, ideology, and inequality. The power has been the strength of a very small elite to have more and more control over the laws and regulations that get set. The ideology is the set of ideas that have facilitated the operation of that power and have also served to keep the regulations that did exist from being enforced. And I'll come back to that in a moment. Now, the power and ideology haven't always been the way they have been in the last few years. I don't mean we lived in a society 50 or 60 years ago where everything was democratically controlled and the people ruled and so on. And I certainly don't mean that we had a society that was a very equal society in terms of the distribution of income and wealth. But we did have a society that was different in very many ways from what it has become over the last several decades. So that is my first message, namely that the roots of the economic crisis are in the growing inequality of income and wealth that has taken place over the last few decades, and in the power and ideology, in the perversion of power and ideology that have gone along with that inequality. Power, ideas, and inequality form a vicious circle. They support one another. The more unequal things are, the greater power in the hands of those at the top. The greater power in the hands of those at the top, they are able to structure the set of ideas by which we live, and they are able to structure the rules and regulations that increase inequality, and round it goes. This, of course, gives you an idea of what I'm going to get at the end of what I have to say. Namely, the problem is to reverse that vicious circle and transform it into a virtuous circle. And I'll have a little bit to say, and other speakers tonight will have a lot more to say about how you break into that vicious circle and transform it. So let me just say a little bit more of substance about these factors and how they led to the crisis. First of all, the degree of inequality. During the 1920s, let me give you one set of figures that illustrate the point. During the 1920s, in 1928, the group of families that constituted the top 1% of income receivers received 24% of all income in that year. During the Great Depression and the war, a major transformation took place. So that after the war, that group at the top 1%, got 12% of the income. Still a disproportionately large share, but far less, half of the share they had received, had obtained. Some people say earned, I like to say obtained. I find it a more neutral word. Had obtained before the Depression and the war. And in fact, things continued in that direction. By the 1970s, that group was getting about 9%. On the eve of the current recession, that group was back up where it was in the 1920s. In 2005, that group received 22.9%, I believe. So you're 22 point something percent of all income. Now that's a tremendous transformation. It was a continuous transformation from the 1970s onward. Associated with it was a power shift, or if you will, a power grab.